Hi, everyone, and welcome to Transistance. I am your host tonight, Emily. Jeannie is not able to make it, so I will be taking the reins and running us through this. Another exciting thing that's happening tonight is this is Kari's first night producing the show and my first night not producing the show. So I get to focus on just being on the show and handling the articles and stuff like that. And Kari's behind the scenes doing the hard work and the heavy lifting. So give her lots of love and lots of patience tonight. And now I will introduce my co-host, Marla. I'm not hearing Marla.
That's me. That's my fault.
It's okay. She's new.
Can we start over? Just go back. I'm Marla, and I'm just here to see what happens tonight.
That's the fun thing. It'll be exciting for all of us. We're trying out some new things. Unfortunately, Jeannie wasn't able to make it, and yeah, it's just all the things. My light's not up enough. There we go. Okay. And for those of you watching, this isn't even our first show. Let's go ahead and jump into the first article and see how this goes. Perfect. Ohio GOPers, that's such a weird thing to say in a headline, introduce a don't say gay bill and then flee from questions. Now, y'all, I didn't have a chance because we were setting up a lot of things and found out last minute Jeannie wasn't going to be on. So I'm not very familiar with the articles. Tonight, it will be Marla doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Marla, what is going on in Ohio?
Marla just found out this information. Okay. So in Ohio, I only read through them briefly. In Ohio, they have now put up another don't say gay like bill. In addition to basically the same wording as Florida used, they also, just for the hell of it, added in that you could not teach any curriculum, instructional material, or assignment designed to promote or endorse this is a good night. Endorse divisive or inherently racist concepts. So they're adding what they think is critical race theory, in addition to the anti-LGBTQ, anti-gender, anti-sexuality language of this bill. They said that the classroom is not a place to seek answers. Sorry, this is going great. Gee.
You're doing great, Marla.
The classroom is a place that seeks answers for our children without political activism. As if teaching people about other people and that racism exists is political activism.
Well, that and the fact that politics are part of our government and part of one of the things we do learn in school and should.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So basically, they put this thing up and then just ran the hell out of there, and reporters were chasing them down, saying, trying to question them, and they just said, I have to go to the Senate, don't harass me. And then when asked, one of the people who put up the bill, Gene Schmidt, replied to the question, could you explain the bill? Gene Schmidt replied, no, I can't.
It was Florida. They did it. We're just doing the same thing. Ask them.
It's so cool and trendy now to do a don't say gay bill. Like, it's so 2022.
Yeah, and that's crazy. It's always so interesting to me to see how, you elect a politician and you think the politician's going to do all these great things and all this stuff. And it's usually after that politician has left for a few years that the stuff that they actually did starts to come to fruition. That's when you start to see it, like, economic boons and things like that, or economic busts, and just various other effects of policy decisions. And it's so interesting that now, where are we? 2 years into Biden, and we're still seeing this huge wave of that bigotry and all that kind of craziness that came with the Trump idealism. Like, oh,
Yeah, it's huh, it's get. I mean, it's been scary, but it's getting even more scary. One thing that was included in this was instructional materials, which again,
okay.
all these laws are unconstitutionally vague, but the fear is the use of instructional materials also means that you can't have books with LGBTQ plus characters in, let's say, the school library.
Mhm. And I know one of your pushbacks to this, because and that was one of the things that they talked about in one of the articles last week, right? Was the removal of pronouns entirely, so that teachers are starting to say they them, because using she her is and he him
Yeah.
are gendered and sex related. So um I wonder if we're going to hear some more pushback of that type here as well.
Oh, I'm loving it. I'm waiting for kindergarten teachers to teach to read Goldilocks and the Three Bears. There was a nondescript human who stumbled upon the home of three bears. Bear number one, bear number two, and a smaller, younger bear number three, who was spewed into the universe through untraceable means.
I really hope that people pick up on that. I love hearing about the teachers that are pushing back with that, because
Mhm.
it's really important to point out the fallacy of this, of like, well, if you don't want any mention of gender or gender politics, I guess, yeah,
Mhm.
gender and sexuality, then we have to remove all of it. And that's not what you want. So
No. Good fucking luck.
let's jump over to Kentucky here and see what the Kentucky governor is doing. The Kentucky governor vetoes cruel trans sports ban. Positive. But
Hmm.
the fight isn't over. I think we know that firsthand, but why do they say specifically in Kentucky is the fight not over? What else is going on there?
So this is essentially identical to what happened in it was Utah, right? In Utah, um, the House and the Senate passed this anti-trans in sports bill.
Mm-hmm.
It was sent to the governor, and now the governor is vetoing it. And it's when I say it's identical, I'm not kidding, because apparently, just like in Utah, there's literally only one trans woman athlete or trans girl athlete in the entire state. So once again, they have built an entire law to single out and dehumanize one single child who's already at high risk and, highly marginalized and susceptible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the governor vetoed it. Um, said it's ridiculous to do this for one person, said that there has been absolutely no proof that there's been any instances where a transgender child has gotten a competitive advantage um, in a sport. But
Mm-hmm.
just like Utah, they very likely have the majority to overrule the governor's veto.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder too if it is part of a bigger political ploy where the legislature is more of a body. The responsibility is spread more over people, and so over more people. So you can kind of claim that's like you just went along or whatever if you're ever pressed on it. Whereas the governor is out there on the front lines.
Mm-hmm.
So they're allowed to do this veto and make it look like they're standing up for it and doing the right thing, so they appease both sides. And then the legislature, like I said, where each individual has more anonymity, then they can be the bad guys.
I think you're probably right, because if I discovered anything in the past 5 years of politics, it's that any vote in contrary to the party line is done very purposefully, with a game plan, with everyone knowing what's actually happening. I mean,
Mhm.
how many times did Republicans pass something by um, Pence having to break it because there were just enough Republicans that were given a hall pass to, look good by voting no? If there had been enough that wanted to vote no, that the bill wouldn't have passed, they wouldn't have been given that hall pass to do that.
Mhm.
So I
Well, then
think you're
I
right.
also wonder what is going to come of a lot of this. Luckily, we're seeing good things, and I think some of the later articles will get into what's happening on a higher level to these. You know, a lot of these are being blocked in court and things like that as unconstitutional. Like you said, they're attacking a very small group. There is one athlete. So there
Mhm.
isn't a lot of backlash to it. A lot of people don't agree with it, but probably I'm betting a lot of people don't care enough because they don't have anybody trans in their family or that they know about, obviously, um, to care about pushing back on this stuff very strongly.
Yeah.
So, and then pair that with the fact that the GOP has done a really good job of demonizing us and creating this boogeyman out of trans people that they're pedophiles or um,
Groomers.
yeah, just trying to get into women's restrooms to skis on women and all this stuff. And like I said before, tangent, but then they also fight against trans youth, which doesn't make sense. But they've created the boogeyman, and now they're attacking us with these laws that, again, nobody in the general public really cares that strongly about. It's not worth them. It's not a hill they want to die on, or it's not a place where like it's just not hitting them where they really care. So they're like, oh, this sucks, but you're not going to see a ton of big protests against it.
I agree, and yet it's some way like in my brain, I could see people getting more outraged over this than if it affected just like a small portion of trans people, or affected just all trans people, which is a small portion of the population, because they can be like, oh, like they're just this group. But you can literally find this one child. How can you like look at this one child and be like, oh, they're deserving of this? This should be met with outrage.
Should be, should be. It's hard enough to get people to care politically as it is.
Yeah.
When it doesn't affect them directly, even harder. And when you're talking about one person, they're like, well, it sucks for them, but nothing I can do about it, sort of mentality.
Hmm. Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to that from that delightful topic over to a slew of articles we have in a row. I think they're all related on
Yes, they're the
Alabama.
same article,
It's all the
essentially.
same article in different
Basically, yeah.
ways. Alabama GOP governor signs bill making gender affirming care a felony. They've been trying to do this in other states with varying degrees of success. It sounds like they're doing well with this. Again, Marla, you've had a chance to review these. Do you have any direct insight into this one?
Yeah, so essentially, this is the first bill banning gender affirming care that has passed. As we all know, the thing in Texas was by order of the governor, executive order. So its legality was much easier to question and put a stop to quickly and immediately. This might be a little bit harder. So it's actually two bills. Um, the first bill bans restrooms for transgender.
Kari, real
I
quick.
think it's just
Jeannie's saying that
students, but let me.
that Marla's voice sounds really weird, like modulated. I don't know if there's anything you can
Maybe
see
it's,
of why.
is it the whole state? I'm actually not sure. Oh, it is. It is schools. It is schools. So it's schools only. Bathroom.
No, not there, because that
A
mutes her
bathroom other
entirely.
than the gender
If
you're
you mute
assigned
her
at
in the
birth.
scene, if you click on the link under her blue,
That part of the bill
bar
also
there, just right where you were,
included, they added
in
an
Video
amendment
Ninja.
to a "Don't Say Gay" add-on
In Video Ninja,
to the bill.
there's
And
a
then
blue
they
volume
passed
slider
the
right under there.
second
There's a
bill,
link
which is
that's
the bill
like
that
more
actually
stuff
bans
or something.
gender-affirming care.
It's a
That, of
text link.
course, includes
Under
surgeries.
Marla's picture, under Marla's
that
video,
doesn't happen.
there's
Bans
3
any kind
buttons
of
on the left and then a
hormone
blue slider,
treatment.
and then there's a text link below that.
And it's punishable by
Click
up
that
to,
one,
I
and then
believe,
click mute in scene.
10 years in prison, if I remember correctly. It passed overwhelmingly in the Senate, which is horrifying. We already have the American Civil Liberties Union, Lambda Legal, Transgender Law Center, all these people already planning to file
We'll check with
lawsuits
the audience
against the state. But yeah, for now, it seems like this is going to be law in good old Alabama.
And the problem is that, you know, what they've done again with their demonization, they've done a really good job. They've demonized surgery, this gender affirming care as surgeries on children.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sex assignment surgeries on children. And to my knowledge, there have only been, I don't know if there have been any in the United States, but there was one girl from Germany who petitioned to get gender reassignment surgery at 16, but that's something that's just not done on any kind of wide scale, if it's done at all. I can't say it isn't because I'm not super versed in that. I haven't looked into the cases that are going on now of that, but it's not a wide scale thing. But that's what they make the headline when they talk about that. Then the truth is that gender affirming care includes anything down to the mental health service that is the most crucial part of it. You know, understanding and accepting the fact that you're trans is incredibly crucial at that time when you're starting to figure yourself out. And you know, that is included in gender affirming care. And so this is a major detriment. This is even a worse deal than it sounds like it is, because at first you're like, well, they aren't really doing surgeries. This sucks, but you know, hopefully we can kind of fight back on this eventually. But it's like if there's, you can't do anything for a child who is transgender. That's a major issue.
Yeah. And the governor had the absolute audacity. And this is, I mean, this should shut down these laws right where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Because the governor had the nerve in signing this thing to say, I believe very strongly that if the good Lord made you a boy, you are a boy. And if he made you a girl, you are a girl. What happened to the separation of church and state? If this is the reasoning the governor is giving, how can this law be accepted and be considered constitutional? Just those words alone, in any reasonable society, should put an end to it. And the thing that we should really pay attention to is that was said. It wasn't just, I mean, while yes, the governor did use the terms boy and girl rather than man and woman, it shows that the goal is to go beyond children.
Mm-hmm.
When you say that basically the whole concept of being transgender is wrong.
Mm-hmm. And that's their basic premise. That it's wrong, and even further, I would think that most people would think that it doesn't exist. I know for a fact we're getting into something later that talks about that being part of the LGBT community is a choice. Sorry for the spoiler there, but it's just their mentality about it, and it is so frustrating because it's based on the Bible, right? But it's not really, because the Bible doesn't actually say that. Somebody's bad interpretation, which has been pointed out to be a bad interpretation, says that, and they've just focused on that, and they keep going on it, and it's just this false premise that they're using. And yes, our government, our politicians, in great part, do want this to be a Christian country. To the point where I'm getting so sensitive to it, to the point where when I hear like Ketanji Brown Jackson in her confirmation talk about her faith in God, and things like that, it's like, oh, it's so incredibly pervasive, and it almost feels like you can't get elected without mentioning that you're a God-fearing person. And I just that belief of separation of church and state, I think it's an utter fallacy. It should be the truth, but I just think it's a fallacy at this point, because that doesn't seem that's what the politicians want, and it doesn't seem like that's what they abide by in any way. And of course, like I said, all that being said, their interpretation of what their God says is wrong. So it's just so many.
Just find it incredibly dense. The people who can believe in this almighty God, but this almighty God apparently makes mistakes, and apparently can only create two varieties. I want to believe in a God that can make endless variety, because the God they are bowing to seems a bit weak, a bit egotistical, and like really just like a not cool guy or girl. I don't know.
not to gender incorrectly.
Not to gender God or anything.
Well, yeah.
Should also mention that this law unlike the Florida amendment that was removed, this actually does require school administrators to forcibly out transgender students.
Great.
You're gonna get kids kicked out and on the street and killed, but God said so.
Well, you made a great point about the diversity. Animals don't all look the same. Birds don't all look the same. God can obviously do variation, even minute variation. I've seen butterflies and moths that look almost identical, like you can't tell them apart, and it's like they're different species. I'm losing my point. Darn it. The thought that God created, made you a boy, so that's what you are. It's like, well, no, he didn't. Like, he made part of my body a boy, but the rest of me that he also made based on your premise is not a boy, but that part is still made by God. So, like,
I mean, highly religious people don't believe that strongly in a personal, like such a personal, diverse, complex identity. Just like the whole idea of humans, being this
Car, you got it. Apparently, they said
above animals in thought
I'm echoing
and
more,
reason
but
and logic.
she
and
sounds
to
better.
me, as an agnostic and a humanist, to me, if there is a God and he gave us the ability to reason above all other creatures, why is such a big part of religion being like, I'm throwing out all thought, all logic, all reason. I'm going with what these guys wrote in this book 2,000 years ago.
Hmm. Who didn't even know what cars or planes were. Like,
Yep,
is it?
thought the sun revolved around the earth. Thought like probably thought the earth was flat. Like
Yeah, and no thought to whether cell phones are against God, go against, what God intended or whatever. Like those are totally man-made, and that's, there's no talk about those sorts of things. Like
yeah,
there's a lot that it doesn't cover, and yeah, it's weird how people like to focus on it and use that as the complete doctrine. Nothing else
yeah,
outside of it could possibly be true,
yeah.
and yeah, we're
Well, I
beating
just
this
love
one.
like just even like for my own ethno religion, Judaism, like some conservatives do these things, come up with these things to like subvert God. And I'm like, do you- for example, on the Sabbath, you're not allowed to carry things outside of your property. Okay? So you couldn't push a baby carriage or carry a bag off of your property during the Sabbath. So what
Okay.
they do is they tie a string like around the whole town, around the whole area, around the whole block, whatever it might be, to be like, this string now denotes that this has extended the property to this area. As if God's going to be like, you got me. You got me. This is what I meant. You got me.
I was just about to smite you, but you got me on the technicality.
Fooled me
So,
on a technicality. Like, come on. It's so
uh,
silly.
I don't want to move on to the next one because it starts with a bad word, but it's just because of this guy's relation to somebody we're not big fans of.
Mhm.
Trump backed Vernon Jones says civil rights don't apply to gay people because they can change. Here's the article I was talking about. It's just a choice. We can change, so the onus is all on us, and none of this is a big deal, right? That's what
Yeah.
he's saying. Marlo,
So
dive into
that's
this one a little bit.
that's essentially what happened. He went on um, a podcast with Steve Bannon, good old Steve Bannon, who I don't know how he's not in jail yet. Hasn't he been like indicted on multiple things and like in contempt of Congress and all this crap? I don't know how this man is still out and talking. Um, so Georgia congressional candidate Vernon Jones on Steve Bannon's show said that civil rights for people of color and the rights of trans people are not the same, which they're not exactly the same. But he said it's completely different because, or because queer people, gay people, can change. That he will always be black, but a gay person or a trans person can just not be those things. Not understanding how any of this works. Um, yeah, that was essentially the whole flapping thing.
Yeah, I and it's always great when somebody goes to that spot, right? Where they go
Mhm.
to comparing it to races, and then here he jumps into slavery, which I love. When did gays come over here on slave ships? Question mark. And of course, the answer is the entire effing time because gays are part of the population, and if you go through population and you steal a bunch of human people and enslave them and throw them on a ship and move them across an ocean, you're going to end up with gay people on the other side of of the whole
Yes, and
ordeal. So,
I mean, there's so much of um, histories of different um, different groups who were brought over here who had a much more diverse concept of gender before being enslaved and brought here.
mhm.
I mean, he behaves as if there are no gay black people. I mean, it's such an erasure. I mean, it's always hurtful when someone in a marginalized community does not understand that while we all have different struggles and different amounts of privilege, because as white people, we have more, even being trans, we have more privilege than a lot of people of color,
Mm-hmm.
um, especially depending upon the setting. But the when it's lost on someone how interconnected all these fights are and how they're all tied into the patriarchy and colonialism and all this fucking garbage that came out of um Anglo-Saxon white Europe. It's hurtful, not just on a personal level, but it's hurtful to the entirety of the picture.
Mm-hmm. Anybody that's not the the overarching power, the white male misogynist culture, we all get crapped on in our own degrees, and the answer is not to is not to then step on other people. That's bullying.
They will, and they're
It's
never going to accept you. Like it's not like they might give you a rickety broken chair at like in the corner of the room to be like, "Hey, I'm here." They will never in our current system accept you as an equal.
mhm,
You will be tokenized, used to inflict pain on other marginalized people. It's not a good look.
mhm,
As I've said before, when they come for one of us, they come for all of us. If you are not at the top of that food chain, you really should be watching out for the rest of the people above and below you on that food chain who are also marginalized,
mhm.
especially the ones below you, which is why we say it's so important to talk about our community and those that are at even more dangerous intersectionalities.
There's a couple of great comments that have come through in chat. First off, I want to point out Lady Luna Wolfs that says, "Yeah, we can change the world. Let's go." I love it. Um, I also love what Bighorn Sheep says. I've always thought like if we could choose, why would we choose to be something that locks us into a life of discrimination and oppression? You know, um, the I guess that's the whole mentality behind this is if you believe that trans people can change, the reason that there are trans people or gay people is that there is not enough pressure yet. And so this just justifies their whole way of being and discriminating against us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so bizarre to have this in an era when science, social societies across the world, so many places you're hearing conversion therapy doesn't work, it's cruel, it's inhumane, and it's being banned everywhere. And yet people are still clinging to this idea like, no, it's just a choice. And it's, I don't know, are they are they living under a rock? Are they, is their head in a hole? Like, where is the message not getting through to some people?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the funny thing is we're here on this show preaching to the choir. Like we're all talking to ourselves here on this and going, like, what are they thinking? Would you ever be down to interview somebody with the opposite perspective, Marla?
Is it at that point an interview or a debate?
I guess the debate. Yes, that's what I mean.
I have so carefully thought out so many poignant rebuttals to these people But at the end of the day, they can say almost anything about trans people, and people will believe it. They can make up all the numbers they want, and people will believe it. And I don't know if there is any positive outcome from debating our existence and our rights.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's like you are just playing into this idea that our rights and existences are something that are up for debate.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the key. It's not that they are talking about what rights we should have. They're talking about whether or not we exist to begin with, and thus the answer whether or not we deserve any rights.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny, like you all covered it last week, right? Well, that Tucker Carlson, was it Tucker Carlson? What's the guy from Fox that said that trans people came about 4 years ago. This whole thing came about 4 years ago.
Oh, I think that was Tucker.
Okay.
Yeah, because I made fun of his frozen food fortune.
Okay, yes, I do remember that. Okay. But I mean that's the sort of thing that we're fighting back against. People don't understand that we existed before 4 years ago, which is insanity. Well, like that means that we came out, the transgender, and I hate throwing the ism on it, but let's just do that for the sake of ease here. The transgenderism came out in the middle of the Trump presidency. That's where it came from. And it's just like, oh, that makes me laugh. What a good time to be trans. Like this seems like a good idea. Let's do it now.
Yeah.
Good God.
Yeah.
Moving on, finally, Georgia passes a bill restricting discussion of race in schools. Did we talk about this already, or is this a different?
I know it's hard to keep track. So,
right?
Georgia, another anti-critical race theory bill. What was the exact wording? Bans teaching of 9 divisive concepts, including that the U.S. is fundamentally racist and that one race is inherently superior to another race. It was clearly taken from the executive order that, do you remember Donald Trump in 2020 was like, federal workers can't be taught about racism? So it was essentially just like copy and pasted from that order.
Yeah, no new ideas. I get it.
No. And then at the very last minute, they were like, let's throw a trans sports ban in there. Those two things are connected. See, this is the thing, Vernon Jones. Why do you think these critical race theories keep getting coupled with, anti-trans and LGBTQ legislation? They don't want any of us to exist or have rights or be seen or be equal. But this one was sort of a little bit interesting because when this was in the Senate, they tried to add an amendment banning trans youth from sports entirely. It was blocked by the House, and now the House has added this amendment that it's only trans girls. No, I think someone must have realized, must have looked at Mac Beggs or something like that, was like, oh, if we allow a trans boy to compete against the girls, they're going to get smashed and we're going to look like fucking idiots.
Which is what we've been saying the entire time. And if you ban people from using their appropriate restroom and force them to use the one in their birth certificate, you're going to have the same thing. And so now they're just backing it out and just pointing at certain people, but their arguments are that are against trans people. So it's like they're poking their own holes in their argument, and yet it's still going through. That like, oh no, we just meant this particular type of trans person. It's like,
Mhm.
I thought you said that all trans people, like, they're not real and it was just a choice. Like, why would you single out one particular type of trans people then?
Yeah. I should also mention this ban is school by school. Essentially, they're saying the schools can make the decision.
Okay.
Um, yeah, that's who I'm gonna trust to do this. Georgia schools are gonna really. I don't know. I don't know if I expect them to. Um,
Yeah, because then it comes down
because
to some
they're
vastly
afraid of
underpaid.
parents' backlash.
It comes down to some vastly underpaid superintendent or some school official, who is susceptible to a lot more direct and local pressure.
Mhm.
I guess it's good from a self-governance sort of way, but it's not good from a human rights perspective. I keep hearing this, that laws shouldn't be able to take people's human rights away. And so that's like the basis of the argument is like, oh, but they can choose, so they don't deserve rights. But then you're just going to ban certain sectors of this population of trans people. That
Mhm.
hopefully, I don't know if if Ketanji Brown Jackson's going to be able to have much power or much voice in the Supreme Court, but I'm really hoping we start to get to a point where these laws are challenged and they are struck down for being unconstitutional. And I'm hoping from that there comes a backlash and proof that the Republican Party is not the law and order. There's not the party of the Constitution. They don't care about it. They care about controlling what they want to control, and they use the Constitution as that argument to get the control, and then they just step on human rights.
Yep.
And I'm just hoping that enough of this will come to light now, that this is a big enough issue. And these things, as we've said, are so obviously unconstitutional that when that comes out, then the premise will shift on I guess, the basis of what the Republican Party is. That would be really nice, wouldn't it?
I don't think anyone in the Republican Party actually believes that they are the party of law and order or the party of small government. They just believe in a party that can just restrict and
Mhm.
punish the people that they want restricted and punished.
Yeah, that's
It
the
is a
reality.
party based on hate.
Yeah. Okay, let's move over to another wonderful state. There are so many good ones in this United States now. It's just wonderful.
Mhm.
Um, Florida Republican wants to make life-saving health care for trans kids a felony. Wonder where they got that idea.
Just again, exact same shit. Um, they're saying this. They want to introduce this for the next legislative cycle. It would be punishable by prison plus loss of medical license for the provider. Um, again, for any hormones or surgeries, which again don't happen. I mean, it's identical to the rest of the crap. There's really not anything particularly different about it.
Yeah. Well, that's the disappointing thing is we're going through the show. It's like at some point we could just record all of our commentary and just play it on loop each week
It
because
just changed, add a different state.
yeah, you're just changing the state name and the players, but all the idiotic um bigotrous ideology keeps repeating and coming out. Like, did I just create a new word? Um,
Yes.
but it's just it's it's bizarre how interchangeable this is. We're just playing anti-trans Mad Libs now.
Hmm.
That's all that's
Yeah,
happening.
that's exactly what it is. You're right.
Um, we were talking about the last article, and this popped into my head, and I forgot to bring it up. We love making up pun words here or stealing ones that others have created. We need one for trans witch hunt. So get your thinking caps on that one, chat. Should we jump? Let's jump over to okay. Oh, we're coming to my state. And surprise, surprise, in California, there's actually good news we can talk about. Look at this. Trans and non-binary people to get guaranteed income in groundbreaking Palm Springs trial. What is going on here? This is exciting for me living in California.
Yes. And it would be also exciting for me if the article would load.
Okay. Still, we'll go to me, and I'll
Yeah.
just read through it because I haven't had a chance to look through it before. But Palm Springs, California will give a group of trans and non-binary citizens a guaranteed income in a new pilot. According to the LA Times, Palm Springs City Council voted unanimously in favor of developing a guaranteed income program to support the trans community starting on March 24th. They allocated $200,000 for the pilot, which will provide payments of $600 to $900 to 20 participants who are transgender or non-binary to spend as they wish. Another 20 people will be monitored as the control group. I don't know what they're controlling for, that like having money is good and not having money is bad or something. I don't know what they're controlling for, but I guess to make it a viable study, you have to do that. Local nonprofit QueerWorks is one of the organizations tasked with designing the pilot. So they've got some tough work on their hands, figuring out a way to make this fair and make this actually work with some data that will be helpful. And hopefully, I don't see this having the same power and the same domino effect that some of these other laws are, but you never know. So Jacob Rostovsky, the chief executive of QueerWorks, who is trans, said in the meeting, "This is a chance to help individuals receive money that we can think of as a subsidy to close the gap in income that the trans and non-binary community faces due to having some of the highest levels of unemployment in this country." And what unfortunately they didn't say in that statement is the highest level of discrimination when it comes to employment.
I don't know if it said it anywhere. I just hope that they are giving preference to trans people of color.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little skeeved by the idea of giving this to trans people when reparations have still not really been a fucking thing in this country.
True. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can still, of course, it's two different fights. Like, you can do both at the same time, but I don't know how good of a look this is if we don't give it to the people who need it the most out of our community.
This is just not going to have good optics to begin with because...
Oh, yeah. I already saw posts about it.
Because
I'm going to say I'm transgender and get $900. That's not the way it fucking works.
Yes, that, and I think a lot of people in this country, particularly the Republican Party, does not agree with the idea of handouts, as they would call them, just giving people money for things.
Unless they're a corporation.
Unless they're a corporation. There you go. Yeah. But yeah, I just think the optics of this are going to be terrible all the way around. We have a massive homelessness problem in this country, and it's been proven multiple times the way to fix homelessness, super obvious: give people homes. If they have homes, they have the opportunity to stay clean and get transportation to jobs, by having an address, and all the other things that you can do that you can't do in this country if you don't have an address. So just giving people the homes is what fixes things. We know that, and yet, the idea of giving homeless people handouts is something that this country vehemently rejects. And so at this time, giving money to trans people is just is not gonna go over well.
I agree. I mean, good for them. Get that $900, but it is not gonna look good right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even look at what happened with affirmative action and how much of a pushback there was against that. You know,
You
there's been a lot
can't
of people like fighting against affirmative action, saying it's unconstitutional because it
we,
gives one group an unfair advantage.
we do not explain equity enough in this country. It needs to be explained in schools. It needs to be explained in politics. It is literally impossible under these oppressive systems, these systems that marginalize groups based upon what they look like, how they were born, so on and so forth. It is impossible to have equality without equity.
Oh, the things we need to teach in school that are just
Mhm.
not even mentioned. Okay. So that was our good news that is probably not going to end up doing a lot of great things for us. Here is just the straight up bad news. Queer bar explodes into terrifying fireball. Again, not a big fan of the over editorialized headlines. After arsonist douses it in gasoline. So this is in New York. And reading the second headline, the arsonist set an LGBTQ bar on fire in a possible hate crime. What's going on in these two articles?
Possible. So this is my neck of the woods, Brooklyn. Um, and I actually had a personal story with this. So first of all, this bar named Rash, I think it's only been around for about 6 months now. Um, LGBTQ bar in Bushwick, Brooklyn, and they were setting up for a queer POC event, and a man walked into the bar, dumped gasoline on the floor, and set the place ablaze. Nobody was killed. Two people were harmed and went to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
The night before this happened, or at least the night before I saw the news about it, I had made a private friends only post on TikTok being like, I lack trans community in my real life. And I would love to be able to go to a bar, especially with another trans feminine person, because most of my community is um, non binary. I don't have a single real life trans woman friend. Um, and a friend of mine was like, you should just go to some trans friendly queer bars. And I made a list of trans friendly queer bars in Brooklyn, which is not many, because most queer bars in New York are for mostly cis gay men, um, mostly white cis gay men,
Mm-hmm.
mostly fit cis gay men. Um, so I had a very short list, and well, Rash is no longer on that list.
Wow.
They do have a GoFundMe. They're looking for $200,000. The GoFundMe, you can find it pretty easily, or it's in my link tree on my TikTok. Um, last I checked, I think they were up to 70,000, but that was probably 2 days ago. So I assume it's much higher at this point. But if anyone's interested in donating to Rash, go find that GoFundMe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just terrifying. I mean, you know, it sounds great that everybody was able to get out. There were a couple people injured. You said, you don't know, until you kind of read into it, you know, trampling, whatever. But there's the quote from this person, Tyler Glenn, who said that they thought it was a fog machine at first because they were far enough out away from it that they didn't understand exactly what was going on. And then they realized they couldn't breathe. The whole thing was in flames. I was banging on walls and I couldn't find the door. I could feel myself about to pass out. And it's just, I don't know what this person was doing, if they were intentionally there to harm people or just to make a statement and destroy the space. But either way, it's people are victims to this. This is very hurtful to them. And the thing it's going to do, the worst part of it, is it makes people feel unsafe.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, you can just go to one of the other gay-friendly bars on that short list, but people are going to think twice about it. Hopefully the security's better now, but I don't know. It really sucks.
Yeah.
My professional opinion. Okay. Let's see. I'm just glancing this headline, and it looks like it might be good news. Let's see if it plays out that way as I read through the headline, which is always fun for me. Florida and Texas hit with travel bans by furious LA officials over toxic anti-LGBT plus attacks. LA, is that LA County? Oh yeah, okay.
Yep.
I didn't know if the LA was Los Angeles or Louisiana. But
yeah. So basically, because of the bills in Florida and Texas, or well, to the executive order in Texas, the county of LA has decided that there will be no taxpayer-funded trips to either state from any of their officials. There will be no traveling and official business that costs taxpayers money until these laws are in fact gone. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much it's gonna hurt them, but I guess it's a message.
Remind me, do you remember what happened a couple years ago in? Yeah, see, I'm not remembering any of the details, so this isn't going to be a good question. But I think wasn't it Georgia that that went forward with some anti-LGBT law or something, and so they lost the NBA championship and a
Was
couple
that
other things.
Georgia or North Carolina?
Okay, one of those.
Yeah. I think it was a trans bathroom ban.
Yes, that's what it was. There you go. Yeah. And so like a lot of major corporations and events started pulling out of the state, and that had an effect. It'd be really nice, this is a nice gesture, sure, that LA County will not send any of their officials to Texas or Florida. Maybe Texas, but I know a tourist mecca like Florida probably isn't going to feel a lot of effects from that. It would be really nice to see some bigger, stronger gestures of organizations, events, things like that starting to pull out of these states.
Yeah,
it seems, like I said, like a nice gesture, but one that's not even going to amount to a drop in the bucket.
Well, we can just hope that it's a start, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's where I go back to with California doing things. I mean, that giving trans people money, I mean, it's a great try. Good on you. This thing, the banning county officials from going to those states, that's cool. Thank you for making the statement. Somebody's got to do it. I just hope that we can get some momentum somewhere and get some bigger people or get some bigger effects, because I want it to be more substantial. I would love that. So here's an interesting thing that would seem contrary, but I think kind of goes back to what I was saying before about how voters are really affected and what they really feel.
Mm-hmm.
Only half of Democrats say they oppose the Don't Say Gay law, while Republicans love it. So the Republicans are super for it, and only half of Democrats come out and say that they oppose it. And again, I think that goes back to the demonization, the messaging that they've said of like, the indoctrination in some of these things. But I think it's a little bit more strongly on the side of it's hard for people to get fired up politically about things that don't affect them directly.
Yeah, I think this is the most depressing article of the night for me. And that's
Really.
saying a lot given what Alabama did.
Mhm.
It's not only that it doesn't affect them, it's that they don't know enough about the history of this kind of legislation, about how this will affect queer youth. They don't know enough about what the law is actually saying, because of course, they're probably falling for some of the same propaganda others are, that this is just like, well, you're not allowed to teach kids sex ed in the kindergartners sex ed, which is not a thing.
Mhm.
So on top of it not affecting them, so they don't care, I also think they don't actually know or care enough to look into it.
Yeah, at the top it says while Democrats show only tepid support for allowing books like And Tango Makes Three, which is a book about a baby penguin who has two dad penguins.
Yeah.
But Republican opposition to it is very strong. 76% of the Republicans support the Don't Say Gay law and are for banning books like this that just feature someone who has something other than the narrative that they want to push of man, woman. That's the only thing, and that's the only thing that's possible.
Yeah. 27% of Americans support allowing discussion of LGBTQ people in elementary school, while half say it should be illegal. I mean, if you can't understand that, also it shows how much they equate being queer to perversion and sex and grooming and pedophilia and all this garbage. Because if you said to them, do you support allowing discussions of heterosexuality in school, those numbers would be way fucking different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this article made me feel like we're alone.
Yeah. Can we get more articles about people saying, well, then if we can't talk about gender identity and stuff like that, then we're going to use they them pronouns and not talk about heterosexual couples either, because I want some positivity.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know if there's anything positive left in the fucking show tonight.
Okay.
Oh, no, there's one. There's one.
And is it this one? We're going back to California again because
Yeah.
California is apparently the only state that's super awesome right now. The first trans judge appointed to the bench in California. This is Andy Murdoch, has served as a chief deputy director of the California Department of Rehab since 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And they're the first openly transgender judge appointed to the bench in California late last month. She'll serve in Sacramento County Superior Court. Let's see. A seasoned civil rights advocate. Murdoch brings
not only is she a civil rights advocate who is surely going to, be empathetic to trans people, she was also born with osteogenesis imperfecta, brittle bone disease. So she has spent half of her political career doing disability rights work. So she's also a huge boom for the disabled community on top of it.
Yeah, and again, those intersectionality places are so important. It's great that she has suffered from something herself, and so it's something that she fights for. It's a little bit disheartening that it sort of it takes that, it's sort of a requirement to be able to see those sort of intersectionalities um, in ideology and what people fight for.
Mm-hmm.
That if, again, going back to that thing I keep saying, if it doesn't affect you directly, it's hard to get people to care about it. So it's awesome that we have somebody who has an intersectionality in their identity. They've got those two different key aspects of their identity, that they're going to fight for both marginalized communities, because again, we need as many people fighting for us as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like I said, it's just there's that little pang in my heart of like, that it's great, but it's sort of would be nice to see somebody who just fights for all of these things, just
Yeah.
because it's right. It's the
Yeah.
right and correct thing to do. And if you want to even go there, it's, I would say, the godly thing to do.
If I could just take an ounce of privilege from every person in this world, one at a time, so they could just fucking begin to understand
Mm-hmm.
it, because that's what it takes for most people, is losing some amount of privilege
Mm-hmm.
to be able to understand just the position marginalized groups are in, and just how much they need to protect their own community, other marginalized communities, and how much the support of privileged people, more privileged people than themselves, is necessary.
Mm-hmm. That's why turfdom is so confounding to me. Like, we're still so far away from true equity and equality for women in this country, wages and the way they're treated and looked at. Like, we're finally getting women in politics in prominent positions. Wasn't Kamala the first female vice president?
Yeah.
Like this is a first, and we're pretty far into this, folks. Like, so we still have so far to go, and now they're like, oh, but wait, we've got to discriminate against this group, and it's like, no, we're pulling the same way you are. We're gonna help everybody out a lot, and so it's just bizarre. Like, um, it's more important for them to step on us and to crap on us than it is for them to say, hey, let's talk, and how can we work together to solve some of these issues.
Well, the truth is, not just recently, but throughout time, TERFs are for the most part white women, and
Of
white
course.
women, cis white women, have always had a history of being partners in crime to the men doing what they're doing. I
Mm-hmm.
will take my rickety seat next to you and be happy to crush down on other marginalized people to keep it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, even it's such a sad thing to say, but so much of the suffragette movement, so much of the reason women got the right to vote is because white women went, hey, we outnumber the black people that just got the right to vote. Give us the right to vote, and we'll vote for the people you want to undo the black vote. It's,
That's a tough thought.
yeah.
That's a tough one. Wow. Oh. And I think I've said it on this show before. I actually know someone who has uttered the words to me that men gave women the right to vote. That I've heard that in person, and someone meant it.
Mm-hmm. If it was
Um,
given by men to women, it was for the purpose of suppressing a different group.
Mm-hmm. Well, why didn't women have the right to vote to begin with? Is sort of more
Because
the
men
question.
took it.
And why did men have the right to vote?
Yeah.
Panda in chat says, did you hear about Charlie Disney? They have publicly come out as trans. Saw it in an article today. That's pretty cool. We have trans folks in Disney. Hopefully they've got some kind of power or voice. Let's move it back over to Texas because I guess we have to. Texas social workers quit over Abbott's anti-trans investigative order. That's awesome. It's awesome in, again, that kind of political statement move, but there are lots of issues I see with that. Yeah. What happens in this article if we read down into it deeper?
It's only half a dozen. I mean, I'm not trying to like put them down, but it's only half a dozen people who are quitting over this. One of them, a trans man, Morgan Davis, essentially, when this order came down and he was put on one of these first cases, he basically said, oh, well, I'm glad it's me. I can be fair and stop this and fix it from the inside. And then when he went to the home of one of these families, essentially, he was told, just you being here condones this executive order. And he was like, fuck, that is 100% correct, and has now quit, along with 5 or so others.
Well, it's such a tough thing that, and this is the truth about this stuff, that it is completely overlooked a lot of times, is what this is doing is this is shifting the focus for CPS in Texas to this trans witch hunt. And what that does is that takes that care away from the kids that actually need it, the kids that are in danger, from their parents. And so it floods the system with a bunch of cases that where the kids aren't in danger. And this takes it a step further when those people feel like, I can't support this, I can't work here anymore, and they quit. And now the entire system doesn't have the support and the care that it did before. So it's just it's doubling the effect, the negative effect of this. And it's just terrible to see, because there are actual children who are hurting or are in danger, and this makes them more in danger because of some witch hunt for something that isn't even true.
Yeah,
it's crazy. And again, like you said, it's not even a huge amount of people, but I bet you that handful that are quitting locally has a dramatic impact on the care that the people that actually need it are able to get.
Yeah, definitely.
Terrible. Okay, this is quick chat over here on on chat. Yeah, people are agreeing with it'd be so torn, because it's like, I want to be part of it, I want to help, I want to be the good part on the inside, but the optics are bad on that one too. All right. Who is this Franklin Graham guy who says the U.S. needs a regime change because trans rights are evil and wicked? Rights for trans people are evil and wicked. This is interesting. What's going on here?
This is the son of Billy Graham.
Ah,
Billy Graham, the famous evangelical POS.
and he's the son of an evangelical, and he has an anti-trans, anti-gay stance.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
Now, first of all, the term regime change is real frightening. Um, I mean, there's not much more to this article. He said it on Trans Day of Visibility. Um, he called trans people vile. Um, yeah, I mean that's essentially the entire article.
Wow, that's a strong word. That's the word I use to describe cucumbers, and I mean that very deeply. So that's a tough word.
But not pickles.
No, I can do pickles. Cucumbers
Okay.
for some reason. Ugh.
Just making sure because you know we could
Not
lose some viewership.
not most pickles. Like the sweeter pickles, yeah, but you know, you're gonna hate me for this. Like a good traditional deli pickle is usually pretty problematic for me. Moving on before I lose Marla on top of everybody else here. British Cycling suspends trans and non-binary cyclists from competitive racing. Um, Before we get into this, you know,
Uh-huh.
I'm just assuming, you know, in this headline that we're going to see something very similar to what happened with Leah Thomas, where Leah Thomas, with all the backlash against her and everything that she was doing in the Olympics, the truth was is that she fulfilled all of the requirements. There were restrictions in place for trans people, and she met all of those.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was perfectly legit in being there. What's going on here with the British cyclist? Is it another case of that?
Yeah. So, um, the particular British cyclist, um, Emily Bridges, did meet the requirements. Um, she got told she couldn't compete literally days before her first event by email. Um, one of the reasons that they didn't allow her is because her cycling license still said male on it, but she had not been granted it. Like she had tried to get it and they just did not give it to her. Um, but she had apparently been in constant contact and they were like, yep, you're meeting all the requirements, you're good, you're fine. And then just a couple days before they went, nope. And then a few days later, they announced all trans and non binary participants are not allowed. I'm interested to know the non binary policy. Like, is that if they're not on hormones? Like what's the, I don't know, uh, what the policy is there?
Mm-hmm.
Um, essentially, their reasoning was, and I'm still trying to fully comprehend this. So there's British Cycling, which is one group, and then there's the Union Cyclist International, which is a different, which is like the world governing body for
Mm-hmm.
cycling. So the British Cycling group um, had made it possible for trans feminine athletes to race domestically, but their cases were still pending with the Union Cyclist International. So the argument is that they could only accrue domestic ranking points, which impacts their selection for big championships races,
Mm.
and that would be unfair. I'm going to assume that the idea is you would do worse in the international realm because there'd be more people and a more diverse pool.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they're ranking up points domestically without having to rank up points internationally, that could give them an advantage. I still think it's pretty shitty reasoning.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and it's another one of those things where it's like, well, then allow, if you're worried about the points and the international versus local, then just allow them to compete internationally. And if they win, they win. If they don't, they don't. Like,
Well, that's up to the other group to do, and they didn't have it.
I love that. Yeah, well, they didn't, so we're not going to, kind of a thing. That just the weakest argument possible. It's another one of those ways that dominoes fall way too quickly when there's just no reason for it.
Yep.
All right, let's help Marla out a bit and jump off of the one sports article and move on. Although what that means is we get to move to our favorite person of a couple. But first off, we're talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene. She gave her definition of a woman, and it backfired spectacularly. Do you agree with this headline and how poorly it went for her? And what was the result?
I made a TikTok about it within hours of this video coming out. She was at, let me see. She was at some small Republican assembly meeting type thing. The Georgia Republican Assembly. And she's complaining that Ketanji Brown Jackson can't even define what a woman is.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, I can define what a woman is. And then says, we came from Adam's rib. God created us with his hands. We may be the weaker sex. We are the weaker sex, but we are our partner's, our husband's wife. You're a rib. You're weak. And you are meaningless without your husband.
You're a piece of
I just want
property.
all the TERFs to stop what they're fucking doing and see who's in the fucking room with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. You're just a piece of property for your husband. That's your role. So the thing is, you know, when people talk about rolling things back to the better time when, you know, whatever, you know, you think of like the 50s and all of that, where it all looked on the outside like it was good, but it was all bad on the inside. And you think that that's just a misogynist perspective, and that women would be like, yeah, but it wasn't great for us. And you have modern women in places of power saying that no, women are just the weaker sex, and we're just supposed to be barefoot and pregnant at our husband's side. You know,
those are those white women I was just talking about.
This is so crazy to demean yourself in your own argument. Like, it's insanity.
Also should bring up that did you know that there's some chance she could be kicked off the ballot?
If there's any chance, that gives me a little bit of hope in this world.
Yeah, the argument is, I think it's the 14th Amendment has an insurrectionist disqualification clause. And since she has supported openly the insurrection multiple times, they're arguing that she should not be allowed on the ballot. And she shouldn't.
Yeah, it's sort of like pick a reason. There's plenty. I love the subheadline. You know, like I said, we're trying to do a new show. Now, granted, we are adding a lot of commentary. It's purely editorial. Like, we're just, you know, getting up here and bitching about our opinions of these things. So, you know, sticking with journalistic integrity is not sort of our bag anyways. But I still prefer when we get the headlines, that the headlines are you know, are really true, newsworthy, that they're devoid of editorial in them. So I'll make those comments here and there, like I did on a previous article. But I do love the subhead here of like relentlessly transphobic. I like it, but there's words I can't say. Relentlessly transphobic far-right conspiracy theorist and sometimes Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene ... It's just like, I love the little dig of sometimes Congresswoman, because it really does seem like she spends a whole lot of her time focusing on, you know, soapboxing how bad trans people are, and not actually doing anything to help her constituents. And I think there's no greater case than this, where she's saying that the female contingent of her constituency there is is the weaker sex and just belong to a man.
I
Oh,
I love pink news because they cover the stories that, mainstream media is not covering.
mhm.
Um, and I say it time and time again. I'm not going to tell any marginalized community to tone police themselves. So, pink news, you keep doing what you're fucking doing.
Well, like I said, it's me being a little hypocritical because it's not like we're trying to adhere to any rules of journalistic integrity. Um, let's finish off strong with our our other favorite person, the one who is on our side of the fence, but very, very, very not crazy enough. Caitlyn Jenner is disappointed that Florida has faced a backlash for their "Don't Say Gay" bill, and in a secondary article, Caitlyn Jenner is a big supporter of Florida's reviled "Don't Say Gay" law. What's happening in these two articles, Marla, as we close this out?
Well, Caitlyn Jenner now works for Fox News, which
Hmm.
is the worst.
Yes.
Um, I mean, what can I say? The woman is a pick me. She is a pick me with all the privilege in the world and
Yeah.
will happily trample on her community.
I
Um,
think I think that's the case again, right? Exactly what you were saying before. An Olympic medalist in the white male role,
mhm.
the place of power in this country, um, slips into being, openly and outwardly trans, gets some backlash from that. But as part of the Kardashians, I'm sure it was no real different than the crap that they got from that. And so just coming from this place of intense, intense privilege.
Yeah. Um, I I mean, what do you do with a problem like Caitlyn? Um, she I mean, she's such a goddamn hypocrite all the goddamn time. It's infuriating that a million trans people could agree with one thing. And if she says in the opposite, you will have people, cis people, defending their position by saying, well, there's trans people who don't agree with you.
Mhm.
What, one? The one, Caitlyn fucking Jenner, who's doing this. And, it's exactly what happened when, I can't even remember who it was. Maybe it was the New York Post or something, was um, pushing Blair White, you know, misgendered her, and all the comments are like misgendering and hate toward her, even though they are the viewers of this station that she is trying to um, pump up and give credit to. You
Mhm.
are literally working for people who fucking hate you, Caitlyn. They
Mhm.
fucking hate you. They don't want you to exist. You are literally a tool for them.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the most pathetic type, right? They're very anti-LGBT, but from a money grab perspective, they see that if they bring in somebody who is trans, then they can get some of that demographic, but they can they can push forward their agenda more strongly because it's like, well, we have someone who agrees with us here from that side, so clearly we're doing the right thing. It's disgusting. That's
It's
just so terrible.
absolutely disgusting, and you'll always be able to find one. Doesn't matter what marginalized community is, you'll be able to fucking find one. And that's all they fucking need.
I love Lady Luna Wolf. That was a wonderful reference. I am such a fan of that from my childhood. They say ship her to Abu Dhabi like normal. I always love that Garfield was constantly slapping Nirmal in a box, throwing the label on and shipping him off to Abu Dhabi. Oh, that's a great poll. Thank you for that. Well, we are at the end of our articles list. Is there anything else that you had that you wanted to talk about, Marla, before we let everybody go?
No, nothing special this week. I don't have any long rants. I'm just going to remind everybody if they want to go support Rash and, either spread their GoFundMe or donate yourselves, that would be great. That way Marla can perhaps have a bar to go to. If you won't do it for Rash, do it for Marla.
Do it for Marla. She needs friends. Our poor
the place is going to go back up and I'm going to be like, oh, this isn't for me. Like,
yeah, like, oh yeah, I'm over it. I went there twice and just like,
Yeah.
not my scene. We just need to do better about networking you with a lot of the trans folks that we know there. We have several friends in New York, so I've got to work harder to put you in touch with them because our poor Marla is lonely.
Yeah. I mean, I've set up or have started the process of setting up like 3 coffee drink dates.
Nice.
But one is with a trans femme, so that's
yeah, it's funny. Maybe we should have a discussion about that at some point of like the difficulty in getting out there and actually finding other people to hang out with, because like just because someone's trans doesn't mean that you enjoy hanging out with them.
Yeah.
And so,
I mean, there's that element, and like I said, like, of course I want to hang out with my non-binary siblings and my trans man siblings, but there's like something different about having a trans woman as a friend. Because while we're all going through similar situations, theirs is much more close to your experience.
Yeah, it's so interesting, my journey and being trans. Like at first, internalized transphobia and trying to come to accept myself. I didn't know if I would be able to date another trans woman at some point. Like I was like, I should. It's sort of hypocritical not to, but I was like, I don't know if I would be interested or attracted, that sort of thing. And now that I'm in a relationship with a trans girl, it's like, oh my God, it's so much better because just that common ground.
Yeah.
We have a new person that came in, that Red Guy's girl, asking, because they're new here, do y'all bring on different people from the trans community to chat? And in a 2-hour show, it's something we probably have time for, and it would be great to do. But no, we're just on here going over some of the news articles that we found throughout the week and sharing them with y'all, and then of course adding our little commentary. I do like the idea of bringing in the community more. We do have other shows. I have a show where I interview trans folks about their journey and stuff. But if you have any ideas like that, go ahead and DM me. I'm Emily would go in the chat there. And you can send me a DM and we can talk about fun ideas you have. We're always open to them. We're always open to expanding the network and adding more shows. So any of those ideas, or, modifying our shows to make them better. Marla, I think this has been a very fun show, and we did a good job tonight considering all of the challenges. Everybody in chat give a silent applause because we don't have any of your audio for Kari in her first time producing the show. You did a great job. Thank you so much for all of the work that you did back there behind the scenes. And yeah, it was great having y'all here. Thank you so much. Tomorrow is the transgender show and Keep Living. Keep Living is first, and then the transgender show. And I've got a fun person from the community that I've been dying to talk to. Her interview keeps getting pushed back, and it's been a bummer. But I'm finally getting to talk to Robin Shakedown tomorrow. Guitarist, musician, all around wonderful person, and she actually works for the Transverse, and I haven't had a chance to talk to her yet. So this is going to be very exciting. Y'all, I love you, and we will see you then. Have a good night.
Good night.